allow yourself to unwind and settle in as we begin a tranquil journey through the extraordinary world of the Middle Ages. Tonight, we will drift through the tapestry of medieval life, discovering the stories and wonders woven throughout its many moments and treasured objects. As the 5th century drew onward, the Western Roman Empire staggered under the weight of centuries past. Its borders, once reaching from the chilly coasts of Britannia to the sun-warmed shores of North Africa, grew ever more fragile. Relentless invasions from Germanic peoples, the Visigoths, Vandals, and Ostrogoths, pressed hard upon the fading borders, while internal fractures deepened as political authority waned. Emperors became transient figures, more guided by the ambitions of generals and officials than by their own strength. Economic hardship, plague, and the slow loss of civic life all contributed to the unraveling fabric of Rome's western provinces. A pivotal moment arrived in the year 476, when Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor in the West, was deposed by the Germanic leader Odoacer. With little ceremony, imperial insignia was sent east to Constantinople, marking the symbolic end of imperial rule in the West. This was not a descent into utter darkness, but rather the gradual emergence of new authorities upon old landscapes. Germanic leaders carved out realms in the former Roman provinces, blending their own traditions with enduring Roman customs. The Visigoths settled in Hispania, the Franks in Gaul, and the Ostrogoths in Italy. In their kingdoms, the Latin language and Roman law persisted, reshaped by a patchwork of new rulers and local ways. This transformation of Western Europe brought profound change. Great cities shrank or were abandoned, roads decayed, and old systems of taxation and administration faded away. Yet within the ruins, the seeds of the medieval world were sown. The Christian Church became a force for continuity, preserving fragments of classical knowledge and offering spiritual and political stability. Society shifted toward localism, with power resting ever more in the hands of regional lords and bishops. The legends and memory of Rome remained vivid, casting a shadow across new societies that aspired, in their own ways, to uphold an echo of the ancient order. From the fall of Rome emerged a mosaic of kingdoms, each shaping the course of European history for centuries to come. Among the most iconic objects of the Middle Ages, the medieval sword stands out for both its legendary silhouette and its deeper significance. Forged in the heart of flickering forges, each sword emerged as a unique blend of practical design and personal stature. Skilled blacksmiths hammered and folded iron and later steel, seeking the elusive balance between strength and flexibility. Crossguard, hilt, and pommel were fitted with equal care, sometimes adorned with simple carvings or precious metal, transforming the sword into both a weapon and a symbol of status and identity. To hold a medieval sword was to sense its purposeful heft. Leather or cord-wrapped grips nestled into a warrior's hand, guiding the wrist with surprising agility. Hanging from a belt and brushing against the leg, the sword was never far from its owner's touch, a constant companion, reassuring and empowering. Wearing a sword signified readiness and responsibility, whether striding through the timbered halls of a manor or traveling the uneven roads beyond stone walls. Yet the sword was more than a tool of war. It occupied a place of reverence in medieval imagination. To swear an oath upon a blade was to invoke ideals of honor and loyalty. The rituals of knighthood unfolded with a sword's edge upon the shoulder. Stories and songs told of legendary blades with names and destinies, echoing through the tapestry of life as symbols of courage, justice, and the enduring quest for order in a turbulent world. In the centuries after the Roman collapse, Europe grew quieter and more uncertain, yet new and powerful currents began to reshape the land and its people. Chief among them was the spread of Christianity, a faith that moved from whispered gatherings in Roman cities to distant fields and forests. Traveling priests, royal conversions, and missionaries carried Christianity deep into lands that would become France, Germany, and England. Pagan chieftains and kings met monks and gradually accepted baptism, linking the fate of their tribes to this new spiritual order. Central to this transformation was monasticism. Inspired by hermits of Egypt and by leaders like Benedict of Nursia, men and women withdrew from worldly life to form communities dedicated to prayer, study, and labor. Scattered across the landscape, monasteries became islands of learning and order in a turbulent age. Within their walls, ancient manuscripts were preserved by candlelight, and monks cultivated new techniques in farming, architecture, and medicine. A life of discipline and contemplation offered spiritual solace and a model of stability, drawing the support of kings and lords who endowed these quiet centers with land and resources. The spread of Christianity and monasticism transformed both the cultural and physical landscape of medieval Europe. Churches and monasteries became focal points for communities, offering sanctuary, charity, and knowledge. Feasts and fasts structured the daily rhythm. Old pagan customs mingled with new Christian traditions. Monastic scholars and missionaries laid the groundwork for universities, the flowering of art, literature, and the gradual reshaping of customs under the guiding hand of Christian thought. What began as a quiet spiritual movement ultimately rewove the fabric of Europe, leaving a legacy that would shape the continent for generations. Amid the stone walls of monasteries and noble houses, illuminated manuscripts reflected the devotion and artistry of the medieval world. Crafted by human hands, these precious books were far more than vessels for the written word. Their pages, shimmering with gold leaf and vibrant pigments, unfolded stories sacred and secular, a tapestry of faith, knowledge, and beauty, woven line by line across animal skin parchment. To hold an illuminated manuscript was to cradle centuries of skill and patience. Covers adorned with leather, gemstones, or intricate metalwork promised hidden wonders. Turning each supple page revealed delicate vines and blossoms blooming in the margins. Miniature scenes of biblical drama and daily life. Painted gold caught the candlelight, giving a glow that seemed otherworldly, while the calligrapher's hand animated every measured letter. For monastic scribes, creating such a book was an act of devotion as much as endurance. In everyday life, illuminated manuscripts bridged faith, learning, and social prestige. In churches and abbeys, they preserved sacred liturgy and ancient wisdom. For the noble and fortunate, illuminated books were treasures, symbols of wealth and education, sometimes worn as amulets or carefully presented on special occasions. For most, these books remained distant wonders, glimpsed only in ceremony, their shimmering magic a hint of divine beauty beyond everyday reach. Thus, the illuminated manuscript became a symbol of the medieval quest for knowledge, beauty, and meaning. Each was its own universe, wrought patiently from ink, gold, and hope, a silent companion through dark nights, a luminous testament to human creativity in an age of faith and shadow. During the latter part of the 8th century, a powerful ruler arose who would shape medieval history in profound ways. Charlemagne, Carolus Magnus in Latin, or Charles the Great, ascended to the throne of the Franks in 768, forging a vast empire that stretched from the Pyrenees to the Danube. Reuniting much of Western and Central Europe for the first time since Rome's fall, Charlemagne's rise was the product of Carolingian strength, built on alliances, military prowess, and the decline of Merovingian authority. As he expanded his realm through war and diplomacy, Charlemagne cultivated strong ties with the papacy, culminating in his coronation as emperor by Pope Leo III on Christmas Day in the year 800. This revival of the Western imperial title marked a new era, uniting secular leadership with the role of protector of Christendom. Under Charlemagne, the Carolingian Empire became a center of renewal and learning. The Carolingian Renaissance flourished in his royal courts, where scholars, clerics, and poets gathered. Charlemagne's commitment to education saw the creation of schools attached to monasteries and cathedrals, the invitation of learned men like Alcuin of York, and reforms in curriculum and teaching. Latin was preserved and refined. Innovations in handwriting made texts more legible and easier to copy. The careful copying of ancient manuscripts in monasteries preserved a wealth of classical and Christian literature that might otherwise have vanished. Charlemagne's reign left a deep and lasting legacy. The foundations he laid for administrative reform, legal order, and cultural revival echoed through the medieval world. Feudal customs spread out from his court, the concept of Christendom solidified. By fostering education and governance, Charlemagne gave fractured Europe tools for continuity and identity, even as his empire fragmented under later rulers. The echo of the Carolingian Renaissance persisted in the halls of learning and in chronicles of history. Among the treasures of this era, Carolingian illuminated manuscripts represent the convergence of sacred ritual, scholarly ambition, and craftsmanship. To create these volumes, monks and scribes gathered in hushed scriptoria, working beneath lamplight. Each page began as carefully prepared parchment. Upon it, skilled hands guided quills to form flowing Latin script. Around the text, artists painted vibrant illustrations, using gold leaf and pigments made from precious minerals. The result was a tapestry of color worthy of the sacred words it enclosed. Holding a Carolingian manuscript, one cradled both beauty and wisdom. Ornate covers adorned with ivory or metalwork heightened the sense that these books were vessels of something lasting. In the quiet of morning, monks unfastened clasps and whispered prayers as they turned radiant pages. For the rare layperson permitted to see them, the experience bordered on the otherworldly. These manuscripts preserved knowledge, played roles in solemn ceremony, and were given as royal gifts, testifying to faith and the unity of empire. In gilded curves and precise script, they bore witness to an age defined by faith, learning, and the enduring beauty of the written word. As the late 8th century unfolded, Europe's quiet coastlines began to tremble under the prows of longships. Norse sailors from Norway, Denmark, and Sweden set out on voyages driven by ambition, population pressures, and a deep hunger for land and riches. What began as daring raids, like the infamous attack on the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793, quickly evolved. The initial incursions shocked established societies, as communities that had flourished in relative safety found themselves at the mercy of skilled warriors, striking with speed and cunning. Yet Norsemen were more than raiders. Many returned not just for plunder, but to settle, farm, and trade. They established communities in the British Isles, northern France, Ireland, and around the Baltic and North Seas. The foundation of the Danelaw in England and the establishment of trading ports like Dublin marked the depth of their influence. In the far north, settlers founded new worlds in Iceland and Greenland, transforming landscapes as Norse customs mingled with local traditions, shaping languages, laws, and social systems. The legacy of the Viking voyages was both destructive and constructive. Old power structures often collapsed, yet new patterns of trade and cultural exchange flourished. Towns grew from former raiding camps. Norse words and customs entered everyday life. Over time, Viking descendants integrated, converted to Christianity, and even became defenders against later raiders. Thus, the Viking Age set in motion changes that reshaped the maps, languages, and destinies of medieval Europe. A Viking longship stands among the medieval era's most iconic creations, a testament to ingenuity, adventure, and the spirit of exploration. Crafted from sturdy oak, each longship was shaped and lashed together by skilled hands. Narrow hull and sleek lines granted both speed and agility, while rows of shields marked the vessel with its crew's allegiance. Boarding the longship, one was greeted by the scent of resin, the feel of weathered wood, and the anticipation of unknown journeys. Ash oars encouraged a firm grip, the woolen sail billowed in stripes of color, and the world stretched outward, the fate of the voyage resting on the arms and courage of those aboard. Longships were not merely tools of conquest. In peacetime, they ferried traders and settlers across fjords and rivers, etching new tales into the Nordic lands. Families launched and blessed new ships, singing old songs at the water's edge. Sagas born beneath the shadow of dragon-shaped prows were woven into the culture, recited by firelight and preserved through generations. Every rivet, every carved bowhead, embodied the restlessness and resilience of a people forever tied to the promise and peril of distant horizons. While the old empires crumbled, the landscapes of Europe witnessed the rise of feudalism, a new social and economic order emerging organically from ties of mutual obligation. With kings and nobles granting land to vassals in exchange for loyalty and service, a complex hierarchy bound rural nobility to sovereigns. The web of relationships provided society's framework where imperial order had faltered. The manor lay at the heart of feudal life, its fields, pastures, and village forming a self-sufficient community under the lord's control. Peasant families worked the land in exchange for rent or a share of the harvest. Serfs, bound by custom, toiled in hope of the lord's protection against famine and warfare. The rise of feudal and manorial institutions altered medieval society, linking noble and peasant destinies in an intricate latticework that lasted for generations. Integral to this system was the manorial charter, a carefully penned document that laid out the rights and responsibilities of land and lordship. Crafted by skilled scribes upon soft parchment, often bearing a lord's pendant seal of wax, the charter described the boundaries, tenets, dues, and customs of the community. For villagers, it was more than legal formality. It shaped daily lives, resolved disputes, and bound the fates of peasants, tenants and lords in a promise that endured. In 1066, the fate of England shifted on the fields of Hastings. William, Duke of Normandy, challenged Harold Godwinson for the throne, and the ensuing Norman conquest marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule and the rise of a new Norman aristocracy. Castles rose as symbols of power, bishoprics were filled with men of the conqueror's choosing, and England became knit tighter into the continental fabric of Christendom. To govern and understand his new realm, William ordered an extraordinary survey in 1086. Royal officers recorded who owned land, what resources existed, and the obligations owed by each. The resulting Domesday Book captured a vivid cross-section of England at a moment of transformation, providing William with a powerful tool of statecraft, and posterity with a lasting record of Norman disruption and ambition. Across the quiet corners of monasteries and flickering lamplight of castle libraries, the Codex, bound in parchment sheets sewn together, became the vessel of precious knowledge. Sometimes adorned with embroidery or gems, these books bore not just text, but the patience, artistry, and spirit of their creators. With the faint scent of parchment and ink lingering, the Codex carried stories, wisdom, and devotion into the world, forming an underpinning to the rhythm of medieval life. Open upon the altar or the scholar's desk, the manuscript codex shaped the spread of ideas, the preservation of languages, and the slow flowering of literacy. Its presence influenced rulers, physicians, and poets alike. Through the codex, the medieval world reached across generations, inviting wonder at the wisdom and beauty of its age. As the 11th century dawned, the kingdoms of Western Europe lived under a rigid hierarchy, the bonds of feudal loyalty, and the authority of the Catholic Church. Tales abounded of distant lands, especially Jerusalem, revered by Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. In the late 11th century, reports of hardship for Christian pilgrims under Seljuk Turkish rule fueled concern. Moved by these tales, Pope Urban II called upon Christendom's knights in 1095 to reclaim the Holy Land. His words inspired thousands to embark on the perilous First Crusade, a journey that launched centuries of crusading campaigns. The Crusades brought warfare and exchange to Europe and the Middle East. Crusaders established a brief Christian presence in the Holy Land, but their gains were always threatened and hard-fought. Alongside conflict came fruitful contact. Europeans encountered advanced knowledge among Islamic civilizations, bringing home ideas, technologies, and goods that invigorated European industry and thought. The long shadow of the Crusades thus brought devastation, yet also transformation, deepening hostilities and spurring the intellectual dynamism of Europe. In the dawn hours and under the sunlit fields, the Crusader sword stood as both symbol and tool. Forged in the smith's fire, tempered for strength and resilience, each blade balanced art and practical need. The grip, wrapped in leather, and the crossguard, echoing the cross, together created a statement of faith and duty. The sword, heavy yet beautifully balanced, was the knight's companion, anchoring him to the world and his sworn oaths. Its presence was felt in ceremonies, in justice, and in the drills that honed knightly skills, intertwining the ideals and complexities of the age. As the 12th century passed, change rippled through Europe's cities and towns. From monastic scriptoria and cathedral schools grew the medieval university, responding to a call for deeper knowledge and the needs of a growing urban population. Learning, once closely tied to religious instruction, expanded in cities like Bologna, Paris, and Oxford. Students and teachers gathered to pursue knowledge of law, logic, and the sciences, inspired by a revival of classical learning. The rise of universities was fostered by prosperity, the need for educated clerks in royal courts, and the allure of ancient thought rediscovered. Scholars engaged in scholasticism, rigorous debate, and close reading aimed at reconciling faith with reason. The university became a vibrant public enterprise, standardizing curricula and degrees, and drawing ambitious minds from across Europe. These institutions nurtured thinkers like Thomas Aquinas and Albertus Magnus, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance and the emergence of modern science. Within stone chambers, monks and scribes labored over illuminated codices, books that fused artistry and faith. Bound in sturdy covers, adored with metal and leather, and crafted on fine parchment, each codex was the work of years of patience. Every letter, every miniature painting, every glimmering accent of gold leaf was a testament to deep devotion and skilled hands. The codex was more than words, it was the aspiration of an entire community, passed from abbey to court and treasured by all who beheld it. In daily life, illuminated codices preserved wisdom, structured devotion, and inspired artistry. They were bridges between solitary scribes and the wider world, between the fleeting present and the enduring glow of memory, a physical embodiment of the medieval era's desire to seek and cherish beauty, truth, and faith. The 14th century brought catastrophe with the arrival of the Black Death. Originating in Central Asia and traveling trade routes into Europe, the bubonic plague gripped the continent beginning in 1347. By ship and overland caravan, it spread rapidly, carried by fleas on black rats, claiming the lives of millions in a span of just a few years. Europe's population was decimated, whole villages vanished, and the very structure of society was shaken. The world already knew hardship. Failed harvests, harsh winters, and crowded homes left societies vulnerable. As plague swept on, terror and confusion became common. People shuttered themselves inside, blamed neighboring outsiders, or looked for meaning amid the suffering. The scale of loss changed society in lasting ways. Labor was in short supply, wages rose, peasants sought new freedoms, and the old feudal bonds between lord and peasant frayed. Guilds and merchants grew in importance, and the very land began to change, as overworked fields fell fallow and woodlands reclaimed abandoned farms. The Black Death left a deep imprint on art, literature, and religious life, heightening awareness of life's fragility. From such devastation, a changed Europe slowly arose, its economy altered, population thinned, and vision of existence changed forever by the reality of the greatest epidemic it had ever known. Through the winding streets of cities shadowed by plague, a new and somber figure took shape, the plague doctor, clad in a long coat and shrouded by the beak-like mask that has come to symbolize the era's struggles. The mask, made of stiffened leather or waxed canvas, featured a long beak packed with aromatic herbs, believed to cleanse bad air, and round glass eye holes. Worn tightly, it reduced the world to dim pools of scented air and muffled breath, both separating and protecting its wearer from the uncertain perils of disease. This mask was more than a practical barrier. For both the afflicted and their caretakers, it embodied resilience and the desperate struggle to keep death at bay. Plague doctors, lantern in hand, made their way from house to house, offering what comfort they could through ritual and care, a strange bridge between fear and hope. In time, the image of the beaked mask entered memory as a symbol of society's efforts to master the incomprehensible, fashioning ritual and order out of the dark unknown. As the 14th century progressed, the kingdoms of England and France became locked in the protracted struggle known as the 100 Years' War. Beginning in 1337 and stretching into the mid-15th century, the conflict arose from dynastic disputes and questions of succession. The English crown, drawn from old family lines, claimed a right to the French throne, while French kings sought to solidify unity and repel foreign intervention. The war unfolded in a patchwork of campaigns, sieges, and famed battles, even as economic and social change upended familiar patterns of life. Amid the clash of nations, medieval society transformed. The old order of armored knights yielded to new weapons, the English longbow, famed at Crécy and Agincourt, and the first crude cannons. War brought devastation, but spurred the rise of professional armies and new senses of identity. Loyalty shifted from feudal lords to the broader notion of nationhood. As the conflict drew to its end, the tapestry of Europe began to take new shape. The feudal order weakened, and the seeds of modern centralized monarchy were sown. Among all the implements of this age, the longbow stands as a symbol of both quiet power and breathtaking change. Crafted from seasoned yew, formed into a graceful arc, and strung with taut linen or gut, the longbow was both sturdy and responsive, demanding strength, patience, and skill. Carried by archers across fields and woodland, it was as much a companion in daily labor as on the battlefield. In contests and musters, the longbow became a touchstone of English identity as men trained together beneath open skies. At Crécy and Agincourt, its flights of arrows shifted the balance of power, allowing common men to play pivotal roles in the struggles of kings. In quieter moments, the longbow rested against cottage walls or among tools, its presence a reminder of the deep ties of community, skill, and resilience that shaped medieval life. Whether serving the cause of king or the needs of family. It echoed the enduring story of the age, a force binding together hope, skill, and the endless quest for meaning amid history's winding paths. Thank you for spending your evening wandering the winding paths of the medieval world. May the quiet echoes of its ancient stories bring you peace and gentle rest tonight.